to say that try to understand deprivation just as a given point of time. I think it is very important, even if it is the question of that, even the question of gender. I think it is important to historicize, and I always feel that the marginality may be studied as an existing structure, but also it can be studied as a process, and as a historical process even is more important. So that I think is important for us. Whosoever is interested in marginality, I think is an important, not only as an attribute, but as the way it is produced. And therefore when it is produced, you have to really go back to the history and look at. I think it is very, very important. If you just look at the given phase of time without really looking at the larger political economy, larger social structure, I don't think it really gives a good understanding of the marginality. So that I think is important. Now, it is in those contexts that let me therefore, so what are the processes through which groups or communities who were identified as tribes came to be part of Indian society? And so if you want to do that, then you have to really go back to the colonial period, because it is the British rule, or it is the colonial state which through war and conquest and even through annexations brought the tribal territory into the structure of the colonial state. So they became, in fact, so India was colonized, and tribals who were on the periphery, they were also in a way incorporated into the colonial state structure. And that is where you find that for the first time they become a part of the same social system. Not, I won't say the same social system, but they become a part of the same political system. In the sense, the colonial state, and therefore they become a part of the colonial state. So you find tribes, non-tribes, different religious groups, they all become a part of the colonial state. And therefore it was more of a political system. But if there is a political system, but nevertheless you find that there is certain kinds of linkages now, that each one of us, or each one, or different groups and communities in India, with the coming of the colonial rule administration, we all became a part of the colonial, so what's called state system. And that I think is within that, therefore you can locate that as to how therefore people who were outside of the framework, in fact they are all brought under the same political and legal framework. Now, when you so colonial system is the starting point to understand, let's say, in certain sense, the dimensions of tribals being part of the same larger Indian society. But what did we really find? What was the colonial system? In fact, rather than giving or empowering or trying to, before that, let me say that tribals, when you really talk about it, what is it that we have in mind? Everywhere in the world, tribe is a universal category, not like caste, which is a very specific category to Indian society. So you can find counterparts of tribes in America, you can find in Australia, you can find in New Zealand. It's a universal category. Now, the tribes was primarily thought about in terms of people who were really savages. In the sense, if you look at in terms of the society, if you look at 19th century, the society was identified as falling at different stages of development. And the Europeans were at the top, and you find that at the bottom of it is what is generally called the tribal people. So they are almost closest to the nature. That's what they were being called savages. And Europeans took it over as their mission to civilize them, civilize in the sense, bring them into the stages of development. Now that understanding of tribes also was in a way introduced in India. So when in India, you cannot be called as a tribes, savages, because India has great civilizations. You had Hindu civilizations, you had Vedic civilization, you had, let's say, Buddhist civilization, Jain civilization, or Islamic civilization before they coming. So how could this be? It can be because it is the civilizations, probably even in the Vedic or in the, let's say, at some point of time, India was even more developed than the UK and Europe. So it is not therefore But within this larger Indian society, which was marked by different kind of civilization, there were people who remained an outsider. They may be influenced by it, but they were not really part of those civilizations. And they were by and large, even in India, were considered as savages, as primitives. And that idea of this, the idea is still being associated with the people even after 75 years of our understanding. I wrote a piece, I think it was, there was a Cunningham Institute of Social Sciences in Venezuela, and there are nearly 30,000 tribal students brought from class, almost from very elementary school till almost what is called postgraduate, spending almost the whole of their life, let's say, in the school. And if you really look at it, they say that we are trying to civilize them, that the idea of civilizing is so important. So they are bringing it, while these people, uncivilized, they are hungry, we are feeding them and civilizing them. So that is happening even in contemporary time, that idea remains. In other words, therefore, tribals were primarily seen as those who were at the lowest stage of the human development. And to that extent, therefore, happened to be the most marginalized segment of the society all over the world. And so is the case in India, because they were not part of the civilization. They didn't have a tradition of reading and writing. They were still very much close to the nature, and they were dependent on the nature. They had not conquered or in a way harnessed the nature in a way in which the civilization has done it. And hunting and food gathering, or even shifting cultivations, or even where the shifting cultivation dependent on the forest becomes very, very important. And therefore, the tradition of reading and writing and all that, scriptures and all that, you don't really find in them. So we always consider that.